3 gunshots, a pool of blood spreading across white marble, and Kang, the most feared Korean Mafia boss on the East Coast, lying motionless with 47 tattooed scales of death running up his neck. The doctor checked. No pulse. Everyone stepped back. The Reaper was dead. But Maya Reyes, a young black woman who served wine to criminals every night, refused to accept it. While armed men surrounded her, while a gun pointed at her head, she pressed her fingers against that dragon tattoo and whispered the words that would change everything. "He's still breathing." They thought she was crazy. The doctor had already declared him gone. But Maya knew something no one else did. She'd seen the warning signs the night before, recognized his failing heart, left him a note he'd crumpled and thrown away. Now, kneeling in his blood, she had one chance to save the man who'd ignored her warning. One chance to prove that even a monster's life was worth fighting for. 3 shocks. 3 desperate attempts. And with her own father's face haunting every compression, Maya refused to let another person die because of pride. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly understand as Kang's heart flickered back to life beneath her hands, was that saving him would bind them together in ways neither could escape. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, love, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The Crimson Lounge had always been the kind of place where questions weren't asked, where men in expensive suits spoke in low voices, where cash exchanged hands beneath tables draped in white linen, where the wine was imported and the secrets were darker than the mahogany walls. Maya Reyes had worked there for 3 years, long enough to know which tables to avoid, which conversations to unhear, which faces to forget the moment her shift ended. She was good at her job, invisible, efficient, forgettable. Exactly what a place like the Crimson Lounge required. A young black woman serving the wealthy, the powerful, the dangerous. She kept her head down, her smile professional, her questions non-existent. The tips were good. Good enough to chip away at her father's medical debt. Good enough to keep her small apartment. Good enough to silence the voice in her head that still whispered about the medical degree she'd abandoned. That night started like any other. The usual clients. The usual tension humming beneath polite conversation. But there was a table in the corner, near the back exit, that made even the other dangerous men glance over with something close to respect or fear. Maya couldn't tell the difference anymore. He sat at the center of that table, Kang. She didn't know his name then, didn't know the dragon that coiled up his neck represented 47 lives extinguished by his own hand. She only knew that when he turned his head to speak to the man beside him, the tattoo seemed to move in the dim light, scales catching the reflection of candles like dark water. She approached to pour wine. Her hands were steady. They always were. But as she leaned forward, she noticed something. The way his breathing hitched. The way his hand moved to his chest, just for a second, fingers pressing against the fabric of his perfectly tailored suit. A small gesture, meaningless to anyone else. But Maya had spent 2 years in medical school before everything fell apart. She had spent countless nights in emergency rooms as a volunteer, trying to atone for the father she couldn't save. She recognized the signs: arrhythmia, irregular heartbeat, the kind that could stop without warning. Maya finished pouring. She stepped back, professional, invisible, but her mind was racing. This man, whoever he was in danger. Not from the men around him, from his own body. She walked back toward the kitchen, pulled a small notepad from her apron, and wrote quickly. Her handwriting was precise, the same careful script she'd once used to chart symptoms and dosages. Your heart. Go to the hospital. When she returned to refill water glasses, she let the folded note slip from her fingers. It landed beside his plate. Accidental. Natural. No one noticed. No one except him. Kang picked up the note, read it. His dark eyes lifted, found hers across the room. For a moment, Maya's breath stopped. She'd broken the first rule of the Crimson Lounge. She'd been seen. She'd interfered. She'd acknowledged what should remain unacknowledged. He crumpled the paper in his fist, said nothing. His expression revealed nothing. The dragon on his neck remained perfectly still. Maya turned away, heart pounding. Stupid, so incredibly stupid. Men like him didn't accept help, didn't accept weakness. She'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. But what haunted her as she moved through the rest of her shift wasn't fear. It was the memory of her father. The way he'd waved off her concerns about his own heart. I'm fine, Maya. Don't worry so much. The way he'd died 3 weeks later. Alone in his apartment. Because pride had convinced him he didn't need help. She wouldn't watch another person ignore the warning signs. Not even a stranger. Not even a dangerous one. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of faces and voices. Kang and his table left around midnight. Maya cleaned their section, collected her tips, prepared to forget this night like all the others. She told herself she'd done what she could. She'd tried. What happened next wasn't her responsibility. But responsibility, Maya was learning, wasn't something you could simply choose to abandon. Sometimes it found you. Sometimes it grabbed you by the throat and refused to let go. She had no way of knowing that in exactly 8 hours she would be kneeling in a pool of blood, her fingers pressed against that dragon tattoo, searching desperately for a pulse that everyone else had already declared lost. The gunshots came at 8 in the morning, when the Crimson Lounge should have been empty. Maya had arrived early for inventory, her key turning in the back door just as the sun broke over the city skyline. She was thinking about coffee, about the supply order she needed to place, about anything except the man with the dragon tattoo who had crumpled her warning into nothing. The first shot made her drop her keys. The second made her dive behind the bar. The third, fourth, fifth, she lost count. The sound was deafening, echoing off marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Then voices, shouting in languages she didn't understand. Russian, maybe. Korean. The sound of furniture overturning, glass shattering, bodies hitting the floor. Then silence. Terrible, suffocating silence. Maya's hands were shaking as she pulled her phone from her pocket. 911. She should call. She should run. But her training, that instinct she'd spent 3 years developing before grief had forced her to abandon it, pushed her upward. Someone might be hurt. Someone might be dying. She peered over the bar. The scene was chaos. Tables overturned. Blood pooled across the white marble like spilled wine. 3 men in dark suits were checking bodies, methodical and cold. And in the center of it all, motionless, was Kang. 3 crimson stains bloomed across his chest. His eyes were closed. The dragon on his neck was soaked in his own blood. More men rushed in. These ones she recognized from last night. His men. Security. Someone shouting orders. A man in his 50s with graying hair and glasses pushed through the crowd. Victor, she would learn later. The second in command. The one who had been loyal for 20 years. A doctor appeared from somewhere, expensive suit, leather bag. He knelt beside Jin, checked for vital signs. The room held its breath. No pulse, the doctor said, his voice flat. Professional detachment. He's gone. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victor's face remained stone, but his hand trembled as he removed his glasses. The other men began to back away, some crossing themselves, others reaching for phones. The king was dead. The empire would fracture. Blood would follow blood. But Maya was still watching Jin's body, still analyzing with eyes trained to see what others missed. The way his chest hadn't fully collapsed. The slight, almost imperceptible movement of his throat. The angle of his head turned slightly to the side in a way that suggested the body was protecting its airway. Her father had looked like that. Still. Silent. Everyone had thought he was sleeping until she'd touched his skin and found it cold. But Jin's skin wouldn't be cold yet. It had only been minutes. Maya's legs moved before her mind caught up. She stepped out from behind the bar, walked through the broken glass, her shoes crunching with each step. Every man in the room turned to stare at the black woman in a simple shirt and jeans, walking toward their dead boss like she had every right to be there. She dropped to her knees beside Jin's body, ignored the blood soaking into her clothes, pressed 2 fingers against his neck, right where the dragon's scales ended. And she felt it. Weak. Impossibly faint. But there. A flutter beneath her fingertips like a bird trying desperately to escape a cage. He's still breathing. The words tore from her throat, loud enough to stop every conversation, every movement, every breath in that room. The doctor stared at her. That's impossible. I checked. You checked wrong. Maya's voice was sharp, commanding, the voice of someone who had stood in emergency rooms and made life or death decisions in seconds. His pulse is erratic, arrhythmia. It drops so low it feels like nothing, but it's there. He's alive. Victor moved toward her, his hand sliding inside his jacket. When it emerged, there was a gun. Who are you? Maya didn't look up, didn't remove her fingers from Jin's neck. I'm a paramedic volunteer, and if you shoot me, he dies. Your choice." The gun stayed pointed at her head. The room remained frozen. But Maya's hands were already moving, tilting Jin's head back, checking his airway, assessing the wounds. 2 through-and-throughs in non-vital areas, 1 lodged near his shoulder. He'd lost blood, but not enough. Not yet. "I need a defibrillator," she said. "I need it now. His heart is failing." "If he dies," Victor said quietly, "you die with him." Maya's eyes finally lifted, meeting his. "Then help me save him instead of threatening me." For a moment, time stretched. The gun, the blood, the impossible situation. Then Victor lowered the weapon, snapped his fingers. "Get her what she needs, now." Men scattered. Equipment appeared. Maya ripped open Jin's shirt, buttons scattering across the floor. The dragon tattoo was fully visible now. Each scale a life taken, each line a story written in violence. But beneath it was just a man, just a heart struggling to beat. She placed her hands on his chest, began compressions. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm as natural to her as breathing. The defibrillator arrived in the hands of a young man whose face had gone pale. He fumbled with the case, nearly dropped it. Maya snatched it from him, her movements sharp and efficient. She'd done this before. In training rooms, in shelters where overdoses happened too often. In the moments after her father collapsed, when she'd tried everything and it hadn't been enough. This time would be different. She placed the paddles against Jin's bare chest, positioning them with the precision of someone who understood exactly where the heart sat, beneath skin and bone. The machine whined as it charged. Everyone stepped back. Everyone except Maya. "Clear," she said, and pressed. Jin's body convulsed. The monitor showed nothing. Flatline. Maya's jaw tightened. She began compressions again, counting under her breath. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. The taste of copper and smoke filled her mouth as she breathed into him, trying to force life back into lungs that had nearly given up. Her arms burned. Sweat dripped down her face, mixing with Jin's blood on her hands. "Charging," she announced. The machine whined again. "Clear." Second shock. Jin's body arched off the floor. The monitor flickered. Still nothing. Victor moved closer. "How many times can you do this?" "As many as it takes," Maya said, but her voice wavered. 2 shocks. Her father had lasted 2 shocks before the doctors had called it, before they'd pulled her away, told her it was over, told her she'd done everything she could. But everything hadn't been enough. She positioned her hands on Jin's chest again, felt the stillness beneath her palms. The dragon tattoo seemed to mock her, 47 scales for 47 deaths, and now perhaps a 48th. Her eyes burned. Not now. She couldn't break down now. Please, she whispered, so quietly only she could hear it. Please don't make me fail again. Compressions, breaths. Her whole world narrowed to this rhythm, this desperate dance between life and death. She thought of her father's face, the way he'd smiled at her the day she'd been accepted to medical school. The way that smile had faded when she'd told him she was dropping out after his funeral. He would have wanted you to finish, her mother had said. But Maya couldn't sit in those classrooms knowing she'd failed the one person who mattered most. Charging. Her voice was steady now, mechanical. Because if she let herself feel, she would shatter. Clear. Third shock. For a heartbeat, nothing. The monitor remained flat. The room remained silent. Maya's hands hovered over Jin's chest, trembling now, ready to start again, ready to continue until her own body gave out. Then the monitor beeped. Once. A single blip on the screen. Then again. And again. I have a rhythm, Maya breathed. Her hands found his neck, felt the pulse strengthening beneath her fingers. Weak, still irregular, but present. Alive. He's alive. The room erupted. Men shouting, Victor barking orders, someone calling for a medical transport. But Maya remained kneeling, her forehead pressed against Jin's shoulder, her entire body shaking with relief and exhaustion and something she couldn't name. Jin coughed. Blood spattered his lips. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. He tried to speak, but Maya shushed him gently. Don't talk. You've been shot. Your heart stopped. But you're breathing now. You're going to be okay. She didn't know if that was true. Didn't know if he'd survive the next hour. But she needed to say it, needed to believe it. Jin's eyes found hers. Even clouded with pain and shock, there was something in them. Recognition, maybe. Or question. His lips moved again, forming words she couldn't hear over the chaos around them. Maya leaned closer. Why? He whispered. Just that. Why? Why had she helped? Why had she cared? Why had she risked her life for a man she didn't know? A man whose very existence represented everything she should fear. The answer was simple and impossibly complicated. Because everyone deserves a second chance, she said. Even you. The paramedics arrived then. Not the legitimate kind, but the ones who served men like Jin Kang. The ones who understood that hospitals meant police reports and questions that couldn't be answered. They loaded him onto a stretcher. Victor followed, but his hand caught Maya's arm as she tried to stand. You're coming with us, he said. Not a request, a command. Maya looked at the blood covering her hands, her clothes, looked at the restaurant that would never feel safe again, looked at the choice she didn't really have. She nodded. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly understand, as they carried Jin Kang toward a waiting vehicle, was that saving his life had just changed hers forever. That the man with the dragon tattoo would wake up in a place between worlds and make a decision that would bind them together. That refusing to give up on him meant he would never give up on her. The safe house was nothing like Maya expected. No warehouse, no abandoned building. Instead, a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, medical equipment that belonged in a hospital, and armed men at every door. She sat in a leather chair beside Jin's bed, her hands finally clean but still trembling with adrenaline that refused to fade. He'd been unconscious for 2 days. The surgery to remove the bullet near his shoulder had been successful. The blood transfusions had stabilized him, but his heart remained the true danger. The arrhythmia she'd detected, the condition he'd hidden from everyone, was growing worse. The stress of the shooting, the trauma, the blood loss, all of it had pushed his damaged heart to its absolute limit. Maya had refused to leave. Victor had stopped asking her to. She checked Jin's vitals every hour, adjusted medications, monitored the machines that beeped and hummed in the quiet room. She did what she'd been trained to do, what she'd failed to do for her father. On the 3rd morning, Jin's eyes opened. He stared at the ceiling for a long moment, then turned his head slowly, found her sitting there, exhausted, her natural hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing borrowed clothes that didn't fit right. "You stayed," he said. His voice was rough, damaged from the breathing tube they'd removed yesterday. "I told you I would." Maya stood, moved to his bedside, checked his pulse. Still irregular, but stronger. "How do you feel?" "Like I died." "You did. For almost 3 minutes. I brought you back." Jin's hand moved to his chest, feeling the bandages, the stitches, the proof of his own vulnerability. His fingers traced the edge of the dragon tattoo on his neck, that unconscious gesture she was beginning to recognize. When he was uncertain, when he was afraid. "Who shot me?" he asked. "Dmitry Volkov. Russian. Victor says he knew about your heart condition." "Someone told him." Maya's voice was careful. "He was aiming for your chest. Not to wound. To kill." Jin closed his eyes. "There is a traitor." "Yes. And now you know my secret, too." Maya pulled up the chair, sat down so she was eye level with him. "Your heart is failing, Mr. Kang. The arrhythmia is severe. Without surgery, you have maybe 6 months. With stress, maybe less. The shooting accelerated everything. If I have surgery, I'm vulnerable, weak. My enemies will move." His eyes opened, dark and calculating, even through the pain. "If they think I'm dying, they'll tear everything apart. If you don't have surgery, you'll actually die. Then they win anyway." Maya leaned forward. "My father had the same condition. He refused treatment because he was stubborn, because he thought he could handle it. I watched him die on his apartment floor while I tried to restart his heart with my bare hands. I was 25 years old, and I failed him." Something shifted in Jin's expression. "How old are you now?" 28. 3 years of guilt. It wasn't a question. He understood. Of course he understood. A man didn't collect 47 scales on his neck without understanding the weight of the dead. "I became a paramedic volunteer because I couldn't save him. I help people who can't afford hospitals, who won't go to hospitals, who've been written off by everyone else. And when I saw you that night in the restaurant, when I saw your hand on your chest, I knew. I recognized it. Maya's voice cracked slightly. I left you that note because I couldn't watch another person ignore the warning signs. Even a stranger. Even someone like you. Someone like me, Jin repeated. A killer. A criminal. A person, Maya corrected. Just a person. With a heart that's trying to give up. Silence settled between them. Outside the windows, the city continued its endless movement. People lived and died and never knew how close they'd come to mattering. Never knew that in this room a choice was being made that would ripple outward in ways neither of them could predict. If I have the surgery, Jin said slowly, I'll need someone I trust to know the truth. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm dying. You have Victor. Victor is loyal, but Victor doesn't understand hearts. Not like you do. Jin's hand extended slightly, an offering, a question. Stay with me through this. Keep me alive. And when it's over, you'll have your freedom, your debt paid. Whatever you want. Maya looked at his hand, looked at the dragon scales climbing toward his jaw, looked at the monitors showing a heart struggling to maintain rhythm. She thought about her father, about the medical degree she'd abandoned, about the restaurant she could never return to, about the life she'd had before 3 bullets and 3 minutes of CPR had changed everything. She took his hand. His pulse jumped beneath her fingers, irregular but present. I'll stay, she said, but not because of debt or payment. I'll stay because walking away means you die. And I don't let people die. Not anymore. Jin's grip tightened slightly. Then we have an agreement. We have an agreement. What neither of them said aloud, what neither of them could admit in that moment, was that this arrangement was more than professional. That saving someone's life created a bond that couldn't be easily broken. That Maya had found purpose in the most impossible place. And Jin had found something he'd thought himself incapable of receiving. Genuine care, without calculation. The surgery would come later. The confrontation with Dmitry Volkov would come later. The moment when Jin would risk everything he'd built to save Maya's life in return would come later. But for now, in this quiet room, with machines keeping time like mechanical hearts, a killer and a healer sat together. And both of them, for the first time in years, allowed themselves to hope that survival might mean more than simply staying alive. That perhaps, in the most unexpected way, they'd already begun to save each other. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been underestimated because of who you are, only to prove everyone wrong? Have you ever saved someone who society told you wasn't worth saving? Have you ever had to choose between walking away safely or staying to do what's right, even when everything was against you? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about compassion, redemption, and the courage to see humanity where others see only monsters, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.